feedback. You see, there's something profoundly misunderstood in our culture of what it really means when a woman walks away. People often think it's about giving up or being too emotional, feedback, or that it's a last resort when there's no other option. But the truth is, walking away is one of the most powerful things a woman can do. Because at its core, it's an act of self-respect. Feedback. When a woman decides to walk away from someone or something that doesn't honor her, doesn't meet her needs, or simply doesn't align with who she is or what she wants to become, feedback. She's not quitting. She's not being cold, bitter, or too sensitive. She's being incredibly strong. She's drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is what I'm worth. Feedback. And if you can't see that, I'll remove myself so I'm no longer standing in a space that devalues me. That takes courage. Think about it. How easy is it to stay where it's comfortable? Feedback. If it's painful, even if we're not happy, we know how to navigate the familiar. We tell our stories to make it bearable. Feedback. Maybe it'll change. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I just need to be more patient. We delay our exit because it feels safer than facing the unknown. And that's human. Feedback. But it's also the slow erosion of self-respect. Every time we stay in a situation that doesn't reflect what we know we deserve, we send a message to ourselves and this is okay. Feedback. I'll settle for less than I need. And the longer we do that, the harder it becomes to remember what we're actually worth. But the woman who walks away, she remembers. Feedback. Or maybe she doesn't fully remember yet, but she's making a decision based on a whisper inside that says, this can't be it. She might not know what comes next. Feedback. But she knows what she's in, isn't it? And that right there is strength. I've seen this happen over and over. Feedback. A woman walks away from a relationship where she's constantly over-explaining herself, where her boundaries are being ignored. Feedback, where her value is only recognized when it's convenient for someone else. She walks away not because it's easy. Feedback, because she finally realizes that staying is costing her more than leaving ever could. Her dignity, her energy. Feedback, her joy. These things are too expensive to keep spending on someone who doesn't invest in her in return. But here's the incredible thing. When she walks, everything changes. Feedback. Not just because she creates space for better opportunities or better people to come into her life, although that often happens too. The real shift is internal. It's in how she sees herself. Feedback. She becomes the woman who chose herself. And that identity, that's unshakable. Even if she feels pain, even if she misses the person or the comfort of what she had. Feedback. There's a deep sense of pride that grows underneath it all. Because she knows she didn't betray herself to keep something going that was never truly serving her. Feedback. She respected herself enough. This ends here. And make no mistake, people feel that when a woman who's been giving accommodating, patient feedback and understanding suddenly chooses to walk, it's not just her absence they feel, it's the absence of their ability to access her energy on demand. They realize they were never entitled to it. Feedback. They just got used to it. And now that it's gone, there's a silence that speaks louder than any word she could have said while staying. Feedback. People start to see her differently, not just the ones she walked away from, but everyone around her. Why? Because self-respect is magnetic. It radiates feedback. When a woman owns her worth so unapologetically that she's willing to walk for it, it sets a new standard. It shows others how to treat her. It shows her friends, her family, her co-workers, feedback, even strangers, that she's not someone who tolerates being taken for granted. That kind of power, it doesn't come from shooting. It comes from silence, from stillness, from exit. Feedback. It's not that she doesn't care. It's that she cares too much about her life, her energy, her future to keep pouring into something that's leaking at the bottom. Feedback. She doesn't walk away to prove a point. She walks away to preserve her peace. And once a woman reaches the point where peace matters more than approval, more than being chosen, feedback, more than being understood, that's when she becomes unstoppable. She no longer needs to be begged to stay, to explain herself one more time. Feedback, to keep lowering her standards so someone else can feel more comfortable. She's not angry. She's clear. And clarity is where real confidence comes from. Feedback. So if you've ever been that woman, or if you're becoming her now, know this: your decision to walk isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's strength. It's love, not just for who you are now, feedback, but for who you're becoming. And that's where the power lies. Feedback. We've been taught in so many subtle ways that love, real love, means sticking it out, holding on, being patient, being understanding, that if we really care, we'll stay and fight. That compromises the currency of connection. And yes, love takes effort. Yes, relationships take work. But let me tell you something that rarely gets said. Feedback. There is a difference between working with someone and working for someone who isn't showing up with you. Feedback. There comes a moment when staying becomes more about proving something than actually building something. A moment when what you're doing starts to look less like love and more like convincing. Feedback. convincing someone to treat you better, convincing them to be consistent, to care, to choose you the way you choose them. And in that moment, it's easy to believe that if you just keep trying feedback, keep giving, keep shrinking, eventually they'll come around. But I want to challenge that belief tonight, because real power, true, grounded, unshakable power, doesn't come from holding on. Feedback. It comes from realizing you have the choice to walk. It comes from knowing that your value isn't proven by how long you stay. Feedback by whether you're willing to leave when your needs are no longer being met. See, we glorify the woman who endures. We admire her strength, her resilience, her ability to keep giving chances back. But we overlook the strength it takes to say no more. We underestimate the quiet power of the woman who decides that her time, her energy, feedback, and her heart are not going to be spent trying to fix someone who doesn't want to grow. Feedback. When a woman realizes that love isn't supposed to be an uphill battle every day, when she understands that her needs aren't too much, and that being met halfway is a baseline, feedback. No onus. That's when everything shifts. That's when she reclaims her power, not by demanding it, not by yelling or pleading, feedback, but by simply deciding to remove herself from anything that doesn't rise to meet her. And here's the paradox, feedback. The second she walks away is the moment she gains what she was trying to get the whole time, control. But it's a different kind of control, not control over the other person, feedback, not control over the outcome, but control over herself, over her standards, over her boundaries, over future. I've seen it play out time and time again, feedback. The moment she stops trying to manage someone else's behavior, stops trying to decode mixed signals, feedback, stops accepting breadcrumbs and calling it a feast. That's the moment she stands in her full strength. Because when you're in a dynamic where you constantly have to chase, explain, prove, feedback, or earn someone's basic respect, you're not in a relationship. You're in a negotiation of your worth, and you were never meant to negotiate your worth. That's not love. That's fear. Feedback. That's survival mode. That's maybe if I just do a little more, give a little more, they'll finally see me. But someone who's right for you won't need convincing back. They won't need a script or a strategy to make them stay. They'll already want to. So many women think that walking away is what you do when nothing else works. Feedback. But I'm here to tell you, walking away is what you do when you work. When you finally start functioning at your true level. Back. When you decide that self-worth is more important than being chosen by someone who only sees parts of you. It's not an act of defeat. It's an act of clarity. It says, I know what I bring. Feedback. I know what I offer. Feedback. Sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is nothing at all. Not call, not try to fix it. Just walk. Not in anger, not with drama, but with silence. And that silence, it echoes feedback. It lingers in rooms long after she's gone. It speaks louder than all the words she tried to use. She was still there, still fighting to be understood. When a woman walks away, feedback. She stops talking not because she has nothing left to say, but because she's already said everything. She's asked, she's expressed, she's reasoned, she's cried, she's compromised. Feedback. And at a certain point, repeating herself becomes a form of self-abandonment. So she chooses her dignity instead. You know what's interesting? People always underestimate the woman who's quiet. Feedback. The one who isn't begging, isn't yelling, isn't chasing. They assume she's easy to forget because she's not trying to be remembered. But it's the opposite, feedback. The woman who walks away without making a scene is often the one who leaves the deepest impression. Not because she slammed the door, because she closed it gently and didn't look back. Feedback. There's a reason silence feels so heavy. It's because it makes sit with themselves. When someone's used to you being available, explaining, justifying, softening every hard truth, feedback, and you stop doing all of that, it leaves them alone with the reality they worked so hard to avoid. Suddenly, they don't have your energy to distract them from their own lack of effort. Feedback. They don't have your words to cushion their avoidance. They're left with the empty space where your presence used to be, and that space is loud. See, when a woman walks away quietly back, she's not trying to teach anyone a lesson. She's just done trying to teach. There's a difference. She's not leaving to get a reaction. Feedback. She's leaving because she no longer wants to be the only one reacting. She's not punishing someone. She's protecting herself, protecting her peace, her time, her sanity. Feedback. And here's the part people don't about enough. Her silence doesn't mean she doesn't care. It means she's finally caring about herself. Feedback. She still feels everything, but she's no longer willing to express it where it won't be valued. There is a deep kind of maturity in that choice. It says feedback. I've realized that continuing to explain my worth is actually diminishing it. That's not detachment. That's wisdom. People don't feel your worth when you overextend yourself. Feedback. They feel it when you take it back, when you no longer offer the version of you they were comfortable taking for granted. And sometimes feedback. The most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away with grace and give them the gift of missing what they never appreciated properly. There's this belief that if you don't say your piece, if we model feedback, if you don't get closure, then you've left something unfinished. But here's what I want you to know. Closure doesn't come from the other person. Feedback. It comes from the moment you realize you don't need their acknowledgement to move forward. You don't need them to agree or apologize or understand why you're leaving. Feedback. You just need to be at peace with your own decision. And that decision becomes your power, because the minute you stop speaking in places that won't hear you, you begin speaking louder to yourself. Feedback. You begin affirming that you are not someone who pleads for crumbs. You are not someone who repeats themselves in the hope of being respected. You are not someone who waits to be seen. Feedback. You are someone who walks, not because you're unloving, but because you love yourself enough to leave what isn't loving you back. This is where silence becomes a language. Feedback. It communicates boundaries without confrontation. It says, you no longer have access to me. And that's often the most powerful message you can send, one that doesn't come through words, feedback, but through absence. And you know what happens next? That silence grows in strength. At first, it might feel like loneliness, like loss, but then it transforms. It becomes clarity. Feedback. It becomes space to hear your own voice again. And in that space, you remember who you were before you started making yourself small for someone else's comfort. Back. You remember how it feels to just be, without overthinking every word, every tone, hoping it will be received the right way. Walking away in silence is not about disappearing. Feedback. It's about reclaiming. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about ending the internal conflict of staying where your soul doesn't feel safe. And that kind of exit, feedback, it doesn't come with applause, but it comes with peace. And peace, my friend, is where power lives. Feedback. When a woman walks away, people often think of it as the end of a relationship, the end of a chapter, the end of something she tried to build. Feedback. But what they rarely see, what she herself might not even fully realize in that moment, is that walking away is actually the beginning. It's the first page of a new story. Feedback. One where she holds the pen and she gets to write narrative on her terms. There's a quiet revolution that happens inside the woman who walks. Something shifts. Feedback. She might feel the pain at first, the confusion, the grief, the second guessing. That's normal. That's human. We grieve the things we gave ourselves to. We miss the potential, the hope. Feedback. The pieces of ourselves we poured into a vision that didn't materialize the way we wanted. But even in that sadness, there's power. Feedback, because the act of walking away means she's no longer waiting for someone else to save her, change for her, or finally become who she hoped they'd be. She's choosing herself. Feedback, and that's a turning point. When she chooses herself, she reclaims all the parts of her that got diluted trying to be loved. She starts asking different questions, not feedback. What did I do wrong? But what can I learn from this? Not, was I not enough? But feedback. Why do I believe I had to prove I was enough to begin with? And it's in that reflection that the real transformation begins. Back. Because the woman who walks away starts to realize that her worth was never tied to how long she stayed. It was never in how much she tolerated, how patient she was, feedback, or how forgiving she learned to be. Her worth has always been in her ability to choose a life that reflects her values, her standards, feedback, her needs, not one that demands she betray herself in order to be accepted. We live in a world that often tells women to be less loud, less certain, less demanding, feedback. But walking away is the opposite of that. It's saying, no, I will not be less so you can be more comfortable. It's declaring feedback. I deserve a life that feels good to live. And that declaration doesn't need to be shouted. Feedback. It's in the quiet decisions, the morning she wakes up and doesn't reach for her phone to check if he's texted. The night she chooses to stay home instead of showing up where she's not seen. Feedback. The moment she sets a boundary and doesn't apologize for it. That's when she starts to feel the weight other people's expectations fall off her shoulders. Feedback. That's when she realizes she doesn't need to keep carrying the burden of making things work that were never meant to. She doesn't need to stay stuck in roles that ask her to abandon her joy. Feedback. She gets to redefine what success looks like, not just in love, but in how she lives. And in that redefining, something incredible happens. She begins to move differently. Feedback. She protects her energy more fiercely. She laughs more free. She takes up space. Not in an arrogant way, but in a way that says, I belong here. Feedback. Just as I am. That's not just self-confidence, that's self-liberation. That's freedom from the story that said she had to be chosen to be valuable. Because here's the true thing, feedback. She was never waiting to be chosen. She was waiting to remember that she already is. And when she walks away from anything that made her forget that feedback, she steps into a version of herself that doesn't need permission to thrive. The people around her will notice it too, not just the ones she walked away from, but everyone. Feedback. There's a new energy about her. It's calm. It doesn't try to impress or convince or beg. It simply is. Because when a woman reclaims her narrative back, she doesn't need external validation to feel powerful. She is. She knows it because she made the hardest choice, not to fight for someone else, but to fight for herself. And listen, feedback, that fight. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's in the little things, the to say no, the strength to start over, the courage to stay alone rather than stay unfulfilled. Feedback. But every time she honors herself, she sends a message to the world. I'm no longer waiting for anyone else to write the story of my life. I've got this. She may not know exactly what comes next. Feedback. She may be stepping into uncertainty, into unfamiliar ground, into questions without immediate answers. But here's the thing. She trusts herself now, not because everything's perfect. Feedback, but because she's no longer ignoring the truth, she's living it. And that's where her power lies, not in how others see her, but in how she now sees herself.